I watched some dude the other day have trouble getting out. No, I could feel coughing like, okay. You didn't have to stop, but go ahead and be a dumbass. Turn there at the waste processing plant. There's some cool little neighborhoods. This one right here?
Yeah.
Huh.
This is right past the Coke thingy. Colts thingy, right?
No, that's the other road up there by the Colts complex with the stoplight.
Oh. Right.
Two double bosses.
Peach blossom.
I've delivered back in there before. Excuse me. Traders Cove Lane. Want to check that out?
Yeah. Private community, no soliciting, neighborhood watch. Okay. Just
Kind of a cool driveway.
Brittany says she's supposed to be up soon to get at her grandfather's house. I said, oh, where is he? She said that he is in Ohio somewhere with one of the family members. I was like, so who's in his house now? She said, nobody.
Oh, it's a cul-de-sac.
Oh.
Whoa! That's a World War II cannon, looks like. Nice. That's for sale. See?
Yeah.
Cool.
It's like a very colonial kind of house. Tennis court.
Never thought, yeah, I should need a tennis court.
Huh?
I said, I've never thought, gosh,